Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're going deep diving into the heart of Europe, exploring the top 10 travel destinations that should be on everyone's bucket list.
Sounds exciting.
And joining me on this grand adventure is Sarah,
Hey, everyone.
our resident travel expert, whose passport's probably seen more stamps than a philatelist's collection.
I wouldn't go that far, but I do love exploring Europe. There's just something about the continent that keeps calling me back.
Well, I bet you've got some incredible stories and insights to share with our listeners today. And for those of you tuning in, if you've ever dreamed of strolling through ancient cobbled streets, losing yourself in world-class museums, or just savoring a glass of wine with a view that belongs on a postcard, well, this deep dive is for you.
Europe truly has something for everyone. Whether you're a history buff, an art aficionado, a foodie adventurer, or just looking for a change of scenery, you're bound to find a city that resonates with your soul.
All right, let's kick off this European adventure with a city that needs no introduction, Paris.
The City of Lights.
Sarah, when you think of Paris, what's the first image that pops into your head?
That's easy. The Eiffel Tower, of course. It's such an iconic symbol of Paris and really of human ingenuity. You know, when it was first built, it was actually quite controversial. People thought it was an eyesore. Can you imagine Paris without it now?
It's hard to picture, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's amazing how something that was once so divisive has become such a beloved landmark. And speaking of Parisian icons, we have to mention the Louvre Museum. It's home to some of the most famous works of art in the world, from the enigmatic smile of the Mona Lisa to the timeless beauty of the Venus de Milo. Have you ever gotten lost in those vast galleries?
Oh, absolutely. I could spend days in the Louvre and still not see everything. But, you know, beyond the grand museums and monuments, I think one of the things that makes Paris so special is its everyday charm. Just sitting at a sidewalk cafe, sipping a café au lait, and watching the world go by. It's a simple pleasure, but it perfectly captures the Parisian art of living.
It's funny you mentioned the cafes, because I was just reading about how some of the most famous cafes in Paris, like Café de Flore, were once gathering places for intellectuals and artists, like Sartre and Hemingway. Imagine the conversations that must have taken place with those tiny cups of coffee.
It's fascinating to think about, isn't it? Those cafes were like hubs of creativity, where ideas were exchanged and movements were born. It makes you wonder if today's coffee shops will inspire the next generation of great thinkers.
Well, maybe we'll find out on our next trip to Paris. But for now, let's hop across the channel to another iconic European capital, London. Sarah, what's your take on London? How does it compare to the Parisian experience?
London has a different energy, that's for sure. It's a bit more edgy, a bit more cosmopolitan, but with a deep sense of history and tradition running through it. You can see it in the grandeur of Buckingham Palace, where the Queen still resides, and in the imposing Houses of Parliament, where centuries of political drama have unfolded.
And yet, you can be walking past those historic landmarks and then turn a corner and find yourself in a trendy neighborhood like Shoreditch, with its street art pop-up shops and a totally different vibe.
That's precisely what I love about London. It's a city of constant contrasts. You can find pretty much anything you're looking for, whether it's world-class theater and the West End, cutting-edge fashion in Shoreditch, or traditional pubs with a cozy historic feel.
And let's not forget about the British Museum. Talk about a treasure trove of history. You can literally journey through time, from ancient Egyptian artifacts to Roman sculptures, and it's all housed in this magnificent building that's a work of art in itself.
The British Museum is definitely a must-see for any visitor to London. It's a testament to the city's long history as a global hub, a place where cultures have collided and ideas have been exchanged for centuries.
All right, our next stop takes us to Italy, to a city that's often described as a living museum.
Rome.
Sarah, what is it about Rome that continues to fascinate and inspire travelers from all over the world?
Rome is a city where every corner you turn seems to whisper stories of the past. You can walk in the footsteps of gladiators in the Colosseum, marvel at the engineering genius of the Pantheon, or gaze up at the breathtaking frescoes of the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City. It's like stepping back in time layer by layer.
And yet it's not just a city frozen in the past. There's a vibrancy to Rome, a passion for life that's evident in everything from its bustling markets to its lively trattorias. Have you ever had a meal in Rome that just blew you away?
Oh, countless times. Roman cuisine is all about simple, fresh ingredients prepared with care and love. A bowl of pasta carbonara, a plate of cacio e pepe, even a simple pizza in Rome tastes like a revelation.
You're making me hungry just thinking about it. And speaking of classic Roman experiences, we can't forget about the Trevi Fountain. Have you ever tossed a coin over your shoulder, hoping for a return trip to the Eternal City?
Of course. It's a tradition I wouldn't miss. But you know, beyond the iconic landmarks and the delicious food, there's a certain magic to Rome that's hard to define. It's in the way the sunlight hits the ancient stones, the sound of church bells echoing through the streets, the scent of fresh-baked bread wafting from a bakery. It's a city that truly captivates the senses.
All right, from the ancient wonders of Rome, let's journey to a city that's known for its modern architectural marvels, Barcelona. Sarah, what makes Barcelona stand out on the European map?
Barcelona is a city that's bursting with creativity and individuality, and I think the best way to experience that is through its architecture, especially the works of Antoni Gaudi. His buildings like the Sagrada Familia and Park Güell are like nothing you've ever seen before. They're whimsical, organic, and absolutely breathtaking.
I've heard people describe Gaudi's style as dreamlike or even psychedelic. It's like he took the rules of traditional architecture and threw them out the window.
Absolutely. He was a true visionary, drawing inspiration from nature, geometry, and his own unique imagination. And you can see his influence all over Barcelona, not just in his iconic buildings, but also in the city's overall vibe. A sense of playful experimentation and a celebration of the unconventional.
And it's not just the architecture that's unique. Barcelona has this incredible energy, a buzz that you can feel as soon as you step onto its streets.
Yeah.
Whether you're wandering through the narrow alleys of the Gothic Quarter, soaking up the sun on Barcelona Beach, or experiencing the city's electrifying nightlife, there's a sense of freedom and vibrancy that's contagious.
It's true. Barcelona is a city that embraces its own rhythm. It's a place where you can be yourself, let your hair down, and enjoy life to the fullest. And that's what makes it so appealing to travelers from all over the world.
Speaking of unique and unforgettable cities, our next stop takes us to a place that's truly one of a kind, Venice. Sarah, how would you describe the magic of Venice to someone who's never experienced it before?
Imagine a city built on water where canals replace streets and gondolas glide silently past centuries-old palaces. Venice is a place that defies logic and yet somehow exists in all its mesmerizing glory. It's a city where you can get lost in a labyrinth of narrow alleys, discover hidden courtyards, and stumble upon breathtaking views around every corner.
It's fascinating to think that Venice was built on a series of islands in a lagoon. It's a testament to human ingenuity and a reminder that sometimes the most improbable ideas can lead to the most beautiful creations.
It's true. And, Venice has faced its challenges over the centuries, from flooding to over-tourism. But there's a resilience to this city, a determination to preserve its unique character and way of life. And that's part of what makes it so special. It's a city that's fighting to stay afloat both literally and figuratively.
And it's a fight worth supporting, because a world without Venice would be a much less magical place. From the romantic gondola rides to the grandeur of St. Mark's Square, Venice offers a sensory experience unlike any other. I think it's a city that everyone should see at least once in their life.
I completely agree.
Okay, from the watery wonderland of Venice, we're heading north to a city that's known for its canals, its bicycles, and its liberal attitude, Amsterdam. Sarah, what's your take on Amsterdam? What kind of experience can travelers expect in the Dutch capital?
Amsterdam is a city that's full of surprises. It's a place where history and modernity coexist in perfect harmony, where you can find world-class museums next to quirky coffee shops, and where canals lined with picturesque houses are also bustling with life. It's a city that's both laid back and energetic, traditional and progressive.
It's interesting you mentioned the contrast between the traditional and the progressive, because Amsterdam is often associated with a very liberal mindset, especially when it comes to social issues. But it's also a city with a rich history dating back to the 13th century, and that history is evident in its architecture, its canals, and its cultural institutions.
You're right. Amsterdam has always been a city that embraces diversity and open-mindedness. It's a place where people from all over the world have come together, sharing their cultures and ideas. And that's reflected in its vibrant art scene, its diverse culinary landscape, and its overall welcoming atmosphere.
And speaking of Amsterdam's cultural offerings, we can't forget about the Anne Frank House. It's a powerful and moving reminder of a dark chapter in history, but it's also a testament to the human spirit's ability to find hope and resilience in the face of adversity.
Visiting the Anne Frank House is a deeply personal experience. It's a chance to connect with history on a human level, to reflect on the past, and to renew our commitment to fighting intolerance and injustice.
All right, our next stop takes us to a city that has witnessed some of the most dramatic and transformative events of the 20th century, Berlin. Sarah, what's your perspective on Berlin? How does it feel to walk through a city that's been shaped by so much history?
Berlin is a city that wears its history on its sleeve. From the Brandenburg Gate, which has stood as a symbol of both division and unity, to the remnants of the Berlin Wall, which once divided the city in two Berlins past, is palpable everywhere you go. But it's also a city that's constantly evolving, reinventing itself, and looking towards the future.
It's incredible to think about how much Berlin has changed in the past few decades. From the fall of the Berlin Wall to the reunification of Germany, the city has undergone a remarkable transformation. And that transformation is evident in its architecture, its art, and its overall atmosphere.
Absolutely. Berlin is a city that's constantly in motion, a place where you can find cutting-edge art installations alongside historical landmarks, where gritty underground clubs share the same streets as elegant cafes. It's a city that embraces its contradictions, and that's part of what makes it so fascinating.
And speaking of contrasts, Berlin is a city that's known for its grit and its glamour. You can find underground punk rock clubs and Michelin-starred restaurants, street art masterpieces, and world-class museums all within a few blocks of each other. It's a city that truly has something for everyone.
That's what I love about Berlin. It's a city that never gets boring. There's always something new to discover, whether it's a hidden courtyard, a trendy bar, or a thought-provoking art exhibit.
All right, from the dynamism of Berlin, let's journey to a city that's often described as a fairy tale come to life. Prague, Sarah. What is it about Prague that captures the imagination and transports visitors to another world?
Prague is a city that seems to have stepped straight out of a storybook, with its medieval castles, its cobblestone streets, and its stunning architecture. Prague has a timeless beauty that's simply enchanting. A walk across the Charles Bridge with its statues and its views of the Vltava River is like stepping back in time, and the Old Town Square with its astronomical clock and its colorful buildings is a sight that never gets old.
It's amazing to think that Prague's historic center was largely spared from the destruction of World War II. It's like a perfectly preserved window into the past, and it's easy to see why Prague has become one of the most popular tourist destinations in Europe.
It's true, Prague has a magic that's hard to resist. But it's not just a city of pretty sights. It's also a city with a rich cultural heritage, from its world-renowned beer to its vibrant art scene. And its people are warm and welcoming, which adds to its charm.
Speaking of Prague's beer, I've heard that the Czechs are serious about their brewing traditions. Have you had a chance to sample some of the local brews?
Oh, absolutely. Czech beer is some of the best in the world, and Prague is the perfect place to try it. From the traditional Pilsner Urquell to the darker, richer beers, there's a beer for every taste. And the beer gardens in Prague are a great place to relax, soak up the atmosphere, and enjoy a pint or two.
Sounds like my kind of place. All right, from the fairy tale charm of Prague, let's journey to a city that's known for its elegance, its music, and its imperial past. Sarah Pomfrisch, what makes Vienna such a special destination?
Vienna is a city that exudes sophistication and refinement. From its grand palaces and its elegant gardens to its world-renowned opera house and its charming cafes, Vienna is a city that delights the senses and nourishes the soul. It's a city where you can waltz in the footsteps of emperors and empresses, savor a cup of coffee in a cafe that Mozart once frequented, and lose yourself in the beauty of art and music.
It's fascinating to think about Vienna's history as the seat of the Habsburg Empire, one of the most powerful dynasties in Europe. That imperial legacy is evident everywhere you look, from the grandeur of Schönbrunn Palace to the elegance of the Hofburg Palace.
You're right, Vienna's imperial past is woven into the very fabric of the city. But it's also a city that's embraced its modern identity, fostering a vibrant arts and culture scene while preserving its rich traditions.
And speaking of traditions, we can't forget about Vienna's famous coffeehouse culture. Those elegant cafes with their marble tables and their velvet chairs are like stepping back in time. It's a place where you can savor a cup of coffee, indulge in a slice of Sachertorte, and imagine yourself surrounded by the intellectuals and artists who once graced those same tables.
Viennese coffeehouses are a true institution. They're a place to relax, to socialize, to read the newspaper, to discuss ideas, to simply be. They're a microcosm of Viennese culture, a blend of tradition, elegance, and intellectual curiosity.
And finally, our last stop on this grand European adventure takes us to a city that's known for its stunning beauty, its dramatic setting, and its recent rise to fame as a filming location for a certain popular TV show.
Dubrovnik. Sarah, what makes Dubrovnik such a captivating destination?
Dubrovnik is a city that takes your breath away from the moment you first lay eyes on it. Its old town, encircled by massive medieval walls, sits perched on a rocky peninsula overlooking the sparkling Adriatic Sea. It's a site that's both imposing and enchanting, a perfect blend of history, nature, and architectural beauty. Dubrovnik has become incredibly popular in recent years, thanks in part to its starring role as King's Landing in the TV show Game of Thrones. But even before its Hollywood fame, Dubrovnik was a hidden gem, a city that had managed to preserve its unique character and charm despite centuries of conflict and change.
You're absolutely right. Dubrovnik has a long and fascinating history dating back to the 7th century. It was once a powerful maritime republic rivaling Venice in its wealth and influence. And that rich history is evident everywhere you go, from the city walls to the rector's palace to the Sponza Palace.
And it's not just about history and architecture. Dubrovnik is also a city that offers stunning natural beauty. The Adriatic Sea is crystal clear, the beaches are pristine, and the surrounding islands are perfect for exploring.
It's true. Dubrovnik is a city that offers the perfect blend of relaxation and adventure. You can wander through the ancient streets of the old town, soak up the sun on a beautiful beach, or take a boat trip to a nearby island. And in the evening, you can enjoy a delicious meal at one of the many restaurants overlooking the sea.
It sounds like the perfect way to end our European journey. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the romantic charm of Paris to the historical grandeur of Rome, the architectural marvels of Barcelona, to the watery wonderland of Venice.
It's been quite a whirlwind tour, and we've only just scratched the surface of what Europe has to offer. There are so many other incredible cities and towns to explore, each with its own unique character and charm.
Absolutely. Europe is a continent that rewards curiosity. It's a place where you can always find something new and exciting to discover, whether you're a seasoned traveler or a first-time visitor.
I couldn't agree more.
It's amazing how each city has its own distinct personality, isn't it? It's like they're characters in a novel, each with their own story to tell.
You know, you're right about that. And I think that's one of the things that makes traveling through Europe so rewarding. You can hop on a train and within a few hours find yourself in a completely different world, with a different language, a different culture, a different pace of life.
And for those of you who are thinking about planning your own European adventure, I bet you've got some tips for navigating these diverse destinations. What are some things that first-time visitors should keep in mind?
Well, first of all, I'd say don't try to cram too much into one trip. It's tempting to want to see everything, but sometimes it's better to focus on a few destinations and really immerse yourself in those experiences. Quality over quantity, right?
That's excellent advice.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of ticking off all the must-see sites, but sometimes the most memorable moments happen when you slow down, wander off the beaten path, and allow yourself to get a little lost.
Right. And speaking of getting lost, I always recommend learning a few basic phrases in the local language. Even if it's just hello, thank you, and excuse me, it shows respect and can go a long way in making a good impression. Plus, you never know when you might need to ask for directions.
Those are great tips, Sarah. And I'd add that it's always a good idea to do some research on local customs and etiquette before you go. What's considered polite in one culture might be seen as rude in another.
Absolutely. For example, in some countries, it's customary to greet people with a kiss on both cheeks, while in others, a handshake is more appropriate. A little research can help you avoid any awkward moments.
And speaking of research, I think it's also important to have a plan for getting around. Europe has an excellent public transportation system with trains, buses, and trams connecting most major cities. But it's helpful to familiarize yourself with the routes and schedules in advance so you don't waste time figuring things out on the go.
You're right. And while we're on the topic of transportation, I have to mention one of my favorite ways to travel through Europe by train. There's something so romantic about train travel. You can sit back, relax, enjoy the scenery, and let someone else do the driving.
I love train travel too. It's a great way to see the countryside and experience a different pace of life. Plus, you arrive right in the heart of the city, which is so convenient. All right, now that we've covered some general travel tips, let's dive back into some of the specific destinations we discussed earlier, Sarah, when we were talking about Paris. You mentioned the Louvre Museum as a must-see. But there are so many other incredible museums in Paris. Do you have any favorites that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Oh, that's a tough one. Paris is a city that's overflowing with art and culture. But if I had to choose a few favorites, I definitely recommend the Musée d'Orsay, which is housed in a former railway station and has a stunning collection of Impressionist and Post-Impressionist art. And then there's the Musée Rodin, which is dedicated to the works of the famous sculptor Auguste Rodin. His sculptures are so powerful and expressive, you can almost feel the emotion in the stone.
Those are great recommendations. And while we're on the topic of art, I have to mention the street art scene in Paris. Some of the most incredible art I've seen in Paris wasn't in a museum. It was on the sides of buildings and alleyways, and even on bridges. It's like the whole city is a canvas.
Exactly. Paris is a city where art is everywhere you look. And I think that's part of what makes it so inspiring. It's a city that encourages creativity and self-expression.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about London. You mentioned the British Museum, which is a must-see for any history buff. But London is also home to some other incredible museums, like the Victoria and Albert Museum, which has a vast collection of decorative arts and design, and the Natural History Museum, which is a favorite among families.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to explore any of those?
Oh, definitely. The Victoria and Albert Museum is one of my favorites. It's a treasure trove of design inspiration with everything from fashion and textiles to furniture and ceramics. And the Natural History Museum is a great place to spend a day with kids. They have a fantastic dinosaur exhibit that's always a big hit.
And while we're talking about London's cultural offerings, we can't forget about the theater scene. London's West End is world-renowned for its theater productions, from classic musicals to cutting-edge dramas. Have you seen any shows in London that you'd recommend?
Oh, so many. London's theater scene is truly world-class. But if I had to choose a few favorites, I'd recommend anything at the National Theatre, which is known for its innovative productions and its commitment to diversity. And then there's the Globe Theatre, which is a reconstruction of the original Elizabethan playhouse where Shakespeare's plays were first performed. It's a truly unique and immersive theater experience.
All right, from the stage to the ancient world, let's talk about Rome. You mentioned the Colosseum and the Vatican as must-sees. But Rome is a city that's layered with history, with ancient ruins tucked away in unexpected corners. Are there any lesser-known historical sites in Rome that you'd recommend?
You know, one of my favorite places in Rome is the Pantheon. It's this incredible ancient temple that's been remarkably well preserved. And what's amazing is that it's still in use today. It's a functioning church. To stand inside the Pantheon and look up at that massive dome, knowing that it was built almost 2,000 years ago, it's a truly awe-inspiring experience.
It's incredible how the Romans were able to create such monumental structures with such limited technology. And yet those structures have stood the test of time, reminding us of the ingenuity and the artistry of a civilization that flourished centuries ago.
Absolutely. And you know, the Pantheon is just one example of the incredible historical treasures that are hidden in plain sight all over Rome. If you take the time to wander off the beaten path, you'll discover ancient ruins, hidden courtyards, and secret gardens that most tourists never see.
Sounds like a great adventure.
Never.
All right, from ancient Rome, let's jump ahead a few centuries to the modernist marvels of Barcelona. You mentioned Antoni Gaudí as a must-see architect. Are there any specific Gaudí buildings that you'd recommend beyond the Sagrada Familia and Park?
Oh, yes. One of my favorite Gaudí buildings is Casa Batlló. It's this incredible apartment building in the heart of Barcelona, and it's like stepping into a whimsical underwater world. Gaudí's use of color, light, and organic shapes is simply breathtaking.
I've seen pictures of Casa Batlló, and it really does look like something out of a dream.
Oh.
It's amazing how Gaudí was able to create such fantastical structures while still maintaining a sense of functionality. His buildings are both works of art and habitable spaces. It's a remarkable feat.
It really is. And you know, Casa Batlló is just one of many examples of Gaudí's genius. Barcelona is a city that's filled with his creations, and each one is unique and unforgettable.
All right, from the whimsical world of Gaudí, let's journey to the watery wonderland of Venice. You mentioned gondola rides in St. Mark's Square as classic Venetian experiences, but Venice is a city that's full of hidden gems. Are there any lesser-known sites or neighborhoods in Venice that you'd recommend?
You know, one of my favorite things to do in Venice is to simply wander through the back streets and get lost in the labyrinth of canals and alleyways. You never know what you might stumble upon: a hidden courtyard, a charming bridge, a secret garden. And I think it's in those quiet corners of Venice that you really get a sense of the city's timeless beauty and its unique way of life.
I love that idea of getting lost in Venice. It's a city that's meant to be explored on foot at your own pace without a map or an itinerary. And it's amazing how even in a city that's so popular with tourists, you can still find moments of peace and solitude if you know where to look.
Exactly. And you know, beyond the main tourist areas, there are some wonderful neighborhoods in Venice that are worth exploring. One of my favorites is the Dorsoduro district, which is known for its art galleries, its charming cafes, and its laid-back atmosphere. It's a great place to escape the crowds and experience a more authentic side of Venice.
Okay, from the serenity of Venice, let's head to the vibrant streets of Amsterdam. You mentioned that Amsterdam is a city that embraces diversity and open-mindedness, but it's also a city with a complex history, with both light and shadow.
You're absolutely right. Amsterdam has a long and fascinating history, and it's a history that's been shaped by trade, by immigration, by war, and by social change.
Oh.
And I think it's important to acknowledge both the positive and the negative aspects of that history.
One of the places where that history is most evident is in the red light district, which is both a tourist attraction and a source of controversy. It's a place where you can see the tensions between Amsterdam's liberal attitudes and the realities of the sex trade.
It's true. The red light district is a complex and multifaceted place, and I think it's important for visitors to approach it with sensitivity and respect. It's not just a place for entertainment. It's a place where real people live and work, and their stories and experiences deserve to be acknowledged.
And beyond the red light district, there are so many other sides to Amsterdam. It's a city with incredible museums like the Rijksmuseum, which houses masterpieces by Dutch masters like Rembrandt and Vermeer, and the Van Gogh Museum, which is dedicated to the life and work of the iconic artist.
Those are definitely must-sees for any art lover. And I'd also recommend checking out the canals. A canal cruise is a great way to see the city from a different perspective and admire the beautiful houses and bridges that line the waterways.
All right, from the canals of Amsterdam, let's journey to a city that's known for its history, its culture, and its resilience. Berlin. You mentioned that Berlin is a city that wears its history on its sleeve. Are there any specific historical sites in Berlin that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Oh, definitely. I think one of the most powerful and moving sites in Berlin is the Holocaust Memorial, which is a vast field of concrete slabs that commemorate the 6 million Jews who were murdered by the Nazis. It's a place for reflection and remembrance, a reminder of the horrors of the past and the importance of fighting intolerance and hatred.
It's a sobering but important reminder, isn't it? And I think it's a testament to Berlin's commitment to confronting its past, both the good and the bad.
Absolutely. Berlin is a city that's not afraid to acknowledge its history, no matter how difficult or painful it may be. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so special.
And while we're on the topic of history, we can't forget about the Berlin Wall. It's incredible to think that just a few decades ago, this city was divided in two news, separated by a concrete barrier.
It's hard to believe now, isn't it? But the remnants of the Berlin Wall are still visible in many parts of the city, serving as a powerful reminder of the Cold War and the division that once existed. And one of the most interesting places to see those remnants is at the East Side Gallery, which is a section of the wall that's been transformed into an open-air art gallery.
It's amazing how something that was once a symbol of division has become a canvas for creativity and expression. It's a testament to the human spirit's ability to transform even the darkest of times into something beautiful and hopeful.
It really is. And the East Side Gallery is just one example of the incredible street art scene in Berlin. All over the city, you can find murals, graffiti, and street art that reflects the city's diverse culture and its creative spirit.
Right, from the historical echoes of Berlin, let's journey to a city that seems frozen in time, Prague. You mentioned the Charles Bridge and the Old Town Square as must-sees, but Prague is also known for its castles and its cathedrals. Are there any specific castles or cathedrals in Prague that you'd recommend?
Oh, absolutely. Prague Castle is a must-see. It's actually a complex of buildings, including the St. Vitus Cathedral, the Golden Lane, and the Old Royal Palace. It's a fascinating place to explore with stunning architecture and a rich history. And if you're looking for something a little more off the beaten path, I'd recommend visiting Vierrad, which is a historic fort located on a hill overlooking the city. It has incredible views and a much more peaceful atmosphere than Prague Castle.
Those are great recommendations. And while we're talking about Prague's historical and architectural treasures, we can't forget about its Jewish quarter. It's one of the oldest and best preserved Jewish quarters in Europe, and it's a poignant reminder of the city's rich and complex history.
You're absolutely right. The Jewish quarter is a must-see for anyone visiting Prague. The synagogues, the cemetery, the museum, they all tell a powerful story of resilience and survival in the face of persecution. It's a place that will stay with you long after you leave.
All right, from the historical depths of Prague, let's journey to a city that's synonymous with elegance and refinement. Vienna. You mentioned the Schönbrunn Palace and the Hofburg Palace as reminders of Vienna's imperial past. But Vienna is also known for its music. Are there any specific musical venues or experiences in Vienna that you'd recommend?
Oh, absolutely. Vienna is a city that breathes music. You can hear it in the streets, in the cafes, and the palaces. And one of the best places to experience that musical heritage is at the Vienna State Opera. Attending a performance there is a truly unforgettable experience.
I've heard that the Vienna State Opera is one of the most prestigious opera houses in the world. It's a place where you can see some of the world's finest singers and musicians perform in a setting that's fit for royalty.
It's true. And, even if you're not a big opera fan, I think there's something magical about experiencing a performance in that historic building. The acoustics are incredible, the atmosphere is electric, and the costumes and sets are breathtaking.
And beyond the opera, Vienna is a city that's filled with music. You can find concerts in churches and palaces and concert halls, and even in parks. It's a city where music is woven into the very fabric of life.
Exactly. And one of my favorite things to do in Vienna is to simply stroll through the city and listen to the street musicians. You never know what you might hear: a classical violinist, a jazz band, a folk singer. It's a reminder that music is everywhere in Vienna if you just take the time to listen.
And finally, our last stop on this grand European adventure takes us to the stunning coastal city of Dubrovnik. You mentioned the city walls and the beaches as must-sees. But Dubrovnik is also a city that's full of hidden alleys, charming squares, and stunning views. Are there any specific places in Dubrovnik that you'd recommend for those who want to get a little off the beaten path?
One of my favorite places in Dubrovnik is Fort Livrianek, which is this incredible fortress that sits perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. It's a bit of a climb to get there, but the views are absolutely worth it. And it's a great place to escape the crowds and enjoy a bit of peace and quiet.
I love the idea of exploring a fortress with stunning views of the sea. It sounds like the perfect combination of history, adventure, and natural beauty.
It really is. And another great way to get off the beaten path in Dubrovnik is to take a walk along the city walls. The walls offer incredible views of the old town, the sea, and the surrounding islands. And it's a fascinating way to experience the city's history and architecture.
Those are great recommendations, Sarah. It sounds like Dubrovnik is a city that has something to offer everyone, whether you're interested in history, culture, nature, or simply soaking up the Mediterranean sunshine.
Absolutely. Dubrovnik is a city that captivates the senses and stirs the soul. It's a place where you can lose yourself in the beauty of the past and the joy of the present. And I think it's the perfect place to end our European adventure.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these diverse and captivating cities.
And whether you're drawn to the romantic allure of Paris, the historical grandeur of Rome, the artistic energy of Barcelona, or the charming canals of Amsterdam, there's a European destination out there that's perfect for you.
You've hit the nail on the head, Sarah. And I think that's one of the things that makes Europe so special, this incredible diversity. You can travel just a few hours in any direction and find yourself immersed in a completely different culture, language, and landscape.
That's so true. It's like having a world of adventures right at your doorstep.
So to all of you listening, if you've been inspired to plan your own European adventure, I encourage you to do it. Don't wait for the perfect time. Just go. You won't regret it.
And remember, travel is about more than just checking things off a list. It's about opening yourself up to new experiences, connecting with different cultures, and creating memories that will last a lifetime.
Well said, Sarah. And who knows, maybe one day our paths will cross in one of these incredible European cities.
That would be wonderful, Mike.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights and passion for Europe. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Learn English Lab.
The pleasure was all mine, Mike. Thanks for having me.
And to all of you watching, thank you for joining us on this virtual tour of Europe's top 10 destinations. We hope you have enjoyed the journey and that you're feeling inspired to plan your own adventure. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more enriching content. Until next time, happy travels.